Yeah, thank you. Um, so, so as I was listening to Chaitanya and how he was opening up uh, the what the mirror of relationship means. Uh, I think I was also getting some new thoughts on uh, in continuation of that email, but just to sort of summarize, I think Chaitanya summarized it quite well. That what I was really referring to in that email is that uh, the mirror of relationship is the topic of our conversation. But apart from being a topic that we are talking about, can it also be an operation in a dialogue or in a conversation, in a gathering? Now, essentially, as Chaitanya is saying, in the mirror of relationship, one is not uh, seeing the other. Like, let's say if we are talking about ourselves, uh, we don't see, or at least the purpose of talking about the mirror is not to find out what's happening with somebody else, but the purpose is to find out something about me that lies hidden from my own observation. At least that's how I am looking at it at the moment. That I don't understand myself, and is this a way to understand myself? So, like normally when we talk about the mirror, a mirror is not a social or like a collective instrument. You go to the mirror by yourself, you look at yourself, and then you've seen yourself. But in this particular mirror that we are talking about, is it also happening in this engagement between us, where sometimes we are addressing someone, and sometimes no one in particular is being addressed? So that was basically where I was coming from in that email. And also, I would like to add to that. Is there something else from the email that we should bring in, Kamalji, or can I move on from there?
No, you can move on. Yes, you can move on from there. Yes. Move on. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm also there's also this curiosity of about what Krishnamurti meant by the mirror and what he meant by relationship. And I think Chaitanya has opened it up quite well, that it's basically looking at ourselves. But I would also like to share something further on that. Uh, so one is about relationship. So what is relationship? So normally it seems to me that what we today mean by relationship, or conventionally mean by relationship, is not what Krishnamurti meant by relationship. And in a few places, I think he has clarified that. So, just to quote from one such thing, he says that all action is relationship. All action. So here, when somebody is talking about action as relationship, then relationship doesn't seem to be something between me and you, or between me and somebody else, but rather it's the movement itself, what I'm doing, that action itself being a relationship, being relationship according to what Krishnamurti is saying now. So I just want to see if we can, in this way, uh, so it's like, so again, if I may take a step back and look at what one typically means by relationship, and Krishnamurti has also talked about it a lot. And he says image, it is image, and uh, my image about somebody else, my image about myself, and it could be image about some object also. And so there there is this one relationship which is with the image, that you could be standing in front of me, but my relationship is the with your image and not with what is happening in front of me. And there is this other relationship which Krishnamurti is saying, which is action, which is the actual movement that is taking place. So this is how I am, in a vague sense, thinking about or making sense of what he has said. I may not really be there, but I hope we can go further into it as we progress. And the other thing I wanted to touch upon is, since we are finding out about ourselves, that then and self knowledge. So, what do we mean by self? What do we mean by knowledge? And and again, here actually, I don't even want to bring in Krishnamurti, because uh, partly because I think what's really important here is that, you know in some sense, actually, what Krishnamurti is saying is actually not ultimately important at all. I think what how we are making sense of it, and how that sense making can move in some other direction, or in, maybe some further deepening of how we are making sense. I think that is what is important. I'm sorry, I think I may be going going on tangents a little bit, but coming back to the main point of, uh, is the self, when I'm finding out something about the self, am I acquiring knowledge? Is knowledge an acquisition as a piece of information which I can then carry on to the next moment and to tomorrow? As, let's say, for example, I found out that I'm ugly, and so that word ugly, that label that I have, you know uh, come up with over here, that then becomes something that hangs on to me. uh, it's like it's very similar to having an experience with someone, and carrying on that experience for years, or even if it's not years, even if it's just one day, it's still carrying. That person may have moved on. That may be, a tendency of that person, but for me it becomes a label. So now, in acquiring labels, and in and then operating with labels, now, to me, that seems similar to, as Chaitanya was, talking about the blame game. So, and it's not just blame alone, but rather it can be anything pleasant also. Like I see something very nice in someone, and I want to engage with that person to get more and more of that nice quality that I see over there. So I feel it's the same thing. And so
Yes, can I add something? Yes, can I add something? And then maybe we can go on to somebody else as well. So I think what I wanted to add to what Chaitanya was saying and what you were saying is something that the difficulty that I often find is that Chaitanya narrated that very nice couplet where the aina doesn't lie. But the problem is that it's like when you're looking at waters which are dirty, the reflection is just not there. I mean, the seeing is not happening. So I mean, I mentioned this because I think this is one problem I particularly face a lot actually. And there is a lovely quote from Krishnaji, which I'm saying because of the quality of that quote, where he says, where the organism is there without the self, then there is no distortion. Then it can see things as they are. So what I was trying to say, Yash, is that an important point, that the bottom line is whether there is an ability to see things as they are. And that is not likely to happen as long as it's a movement which is, basically very intellectual, very thought-driven. So I'm just saying, how in a sense, and we talked about, you mentioned about the self. And I'm looking at it in that example, that are we really able to see things as they are? Because, if the waters are muddy, can that reflection reveal things as they are? Or do I see, I don't know if I've made myself clear with that. So what I see is very important. Very often what I see is just more of that accumulation, more of those tendencies which I already have. So it's not seeing things, with the clarity that brings them up as they are. This is the point I wanted to make. Again, room for discussion on this as well. Pass on to somebody else who would like to chip in.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah.
Hari, you want to say something, Hari?
Yeah, nice, thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah. Okay, I'm Hari Narayanan. I work here in Jodhpur. So it is nice that discussion came to even the point that seeing things as they are. I think that underlies a lot of the points that Chaitanya ji also talked about. So when it comes to relationship, perhaps one of the quotes that points at how things as they are is to be related. So perhaps that is the way things as they are. Our existence is always a matter of relationship with the world at large. It can be anything, but the world at large, whether it is as simple as air or water or other human beings, whatever it is. So it's always related. But many times we do not appreciate this relationship and consider ourselves to be away, alienated or estranged, which Krishnaji used to talk about the psychological division between the self and the world. And it is also talked about by many others also. So when that is dominant, that is perhaps the self that we normally call as self. Perhaps it is something that evolved maybe only in the last 1,000 or 2,000 years. Anyway, that's a different matter. But the point is that as long as that self is dominant and as long as that self is what looks at the world as something alienated or estranged from, then we may not see things as they are. Or the most important thing, that we are entities that are related to the world or that are part of the world. That is something that we end up missing actually. So that is one thing that we may be able to realize if we are able to look at the mirror of relationship. That can be the relationship with the world as well. So when we are able to look at it as it is, we see that there is normally a lot of psychological division between oneself and the world. And if we are able to look at it, then to quote him again, to to look at what is withering away of what is. So if we are able to look at that psychological division as what it is, that can wither away also. But of course, as Chaitanya ji said, overcoming habitual reactiveness is very, very difficult, and it may even require regular practice of awareness or mindfulness. Even though Krishna ji may not have stressed the importance of regular practice, I would say that it is important. Anyway, that is a different matter that whether we want to discuss it or not. I think that's all. If needed, I can chip in again. Thank you.
Pavitra, you don't worry. You can speak in whatever. Don't worry. Whatever you feel convenient. Mix of Bengali English also. Cholbe, as long as.
First of all, I would like to thank Chaitanya sir. He makes very clear-cut explanation about Krishnamurti's teachings, and Harinaran sir also. And আমি মানে বাংলাতেই বলছি।
হ্যাঁ বলো, বাংলাতেই বলো।
যে আজকের টপিকটা যে we can see ourselves in the mirror of relationship, মানে যখন আমরা একটা রিলেশনশিপের মধ্যে দেখি, সেই রিলেশনশিপটা যখন আমি কৃষ্ণমূর্তি পড়ি এবং কৃষ্ণমূর্তি টিচিংস এর সাথে যখন ইউজুয়ালি আমাদের যে থটস এবং আমাদের যে মেমোরির কন্টেন্ট এগুলোকে যখন স্টাডি করি, তখন আমি এটা ডিসকভার করি যে রিলেশনশিপের মধ্যেই মানে আমাদের যে কনসিলড মোটিভ এবং কনসিলড থট গুলো এগুলো এক্সপ্লোর করে। আমি কখনো কখনো মনে করছি যে আমি অনেক কারেক্ট হয়ে গেছি, অনেক ভালো হয়ে গেছি, বেটার, অনেক স্পিরিচুয়াল প্র্যাকটিস করে অনেক আপগ্রেডেশন হয়ে গেছে আমার, কিন্তু অন আ সাডেন দেখা যাবে যে একটা পার্টিকুলার কোনো রিলেশনশিপের সামনে যখন এলাম, তখন দেখা যাবে যে একটা স্পেশাল কাইন্ড অফ থট বা একটা প্যাটার্ন মানে এক্সপ্লোর করলো। যেমন কি হয়, যেমন ভোরবেলা আমরা জানি যে ফুল ফোটে, একটা পার্টিকুলার টাইমেই ফুলটা ফোটে আর কি। তো সেরকম আমাদের থটস, আমাদের যে মোটিভ, এইগুলো ইউজুয়ালি খুব হিডেন এবং মানে আমরা হয়তো অ্যাওয়ারই নাই সেটার প্রতি যে এটা আমার কখনো হতে পারে। হ্যাঁ, কিন্তু একটা পার্টিকুলার সিচুয়েশন বা পার্টিকুলার রিলেশনশিপের মাঝখানে ওটা এক্সপ্লোর করে, যে ওটা মানে ব্লুজুম করে আর কি। তো এটা আমি অবজার্ভ করেছি আর কি। এখন একটা কথা কৃষ্ণমূর্তির টিচিংসে আমরা জেনেছি যে শব্দ মানে ওয়ার্ড আর রিয়েল উইজডম, এটার মধ্যে অনেক ডিফারেন্স আছে। তো আমরা যখন ভার্বাল লেভেলে যখন ডিসকাশন করছি, ইউজুয়ালি এটা একটা যেন মনে হবে টেকনিক্যাল কোনো একটা আলোচনা চলছে বা ফিলোসফিক্যাল আলোচনা, কিন্তু রিয়েল সেন্সে যখন একজন পার্টিকুলার কেউ ডিসকভার করবে বা এক্সপ্লোর করবে কৃষ্ণমূর্তির টিচিংসকে, তখন সেই টিচিংস এর যে সৌন্দর্য সেটা সেই মানুষটার কাছে খুব ইম্পর্টেন্ট হয়ে উঠবে। এইটুকুনি বলতে চাই। থ্যাংক ইউ।
Thank you, Pavitra. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Some women maybe.
Yeah,
Because in Krishnamurti circle space, women don't have a lot of presence, so always good to listen to that.
Yes. Basha, would you like to say something, Basha?
maybe a little later because I joined late.
Okay. No problem.
Okay.
No problem.
Yeah.
Yes. Chaitanya, before we go on to somebody else, just a brief thing, because I'm finding it much easier now to link what you started off with. Is that, like you mentioned that very nice couplet about, seeing, that Noor poetry, which you mentioned about aina jhoot nahi bolta. That's lovely sort of situation. But what I wanted to say was that in the human context, the problem seems to be that the aina and looking at an aina physically, that's a different thing. But in a human context, it appears that the real problem appears to be that the seeing is distorted. Aina mein dekhna hi distorted lagta hai, actually. This is what I'm feeling now. So I'm just wondering how we explore that problem, where the mess that we have created in our own consciousness is such that it's making it difficult to look at the aina also, even in a relationship also. I might be behaving very awkwardly, and yet I don't see that I have behaved awkwardly. And so how does that, overcome that element of where one is actually always seeing through this construct of the self? So therefore, that clarity is never coming, as in that, the lovely poetry that you mentioned about Noor, looking at the mirror. So this is the thought I just thought I'd mention, Chaitanya.
Yeah. Allow me to say something. Let me repeat the couplet. चाहे सोने के फ्रेम में जड़ दो, आईना झूठ बोलता ही नहीं. It's a very beautiful song sung by Sujat Khan, Ustad Sujat Khan. You can watch it on Coke Studio. It's a beautiful song.
Yes.
And the way he has sung it, with the accompaniment of sitar, I mean, it's lovely.
Yes.
So, okay. What I'm saying, we need to understand, Kamalji and all my other friends here. There was a question about what is a relationship. I feel that we are related all the time. Even at this moment, as I said earlier, we have a relationship. We may not be knowing each other. We may not have met each other in person. But there is a relationship. Similarly, I may not be aware that I have a relationship with nature, and I may consider myself as the center of this whole world, whole universe, perhaps. But what proves that I have a relationship is that when we damage nature, somebody else damages nature. Amazon forests far off from there, thousands of kilometers from there. They get burned, cut down. We are affected. So there are relationships of which we are aware, and there could be relationships of which we are not aware, but we are still affected by them. When he says to be is to be related, it means that you don't exist in a void. You're not an island. Whatever you are, wherever you are, at any given moment, there is a relationship. You go out, buy a cup of tea, the way you talk to the tea seller, which has become a notorious word now, a person selling tea, So the way you speak in a bus, in a crowded bus, the way you talk to the conductor when he asks whether you have bought the ticket. I mean, that every moment, the self is not a fixed thing. With every thought, it arises and may or may not come to an end. Then with every thought, it manifests itself. It's not something fixed. And between those two thoughts, there can be also moments when there is no self. Now, when we say self, when I say I examine myself in the mirror of relationship, what is it that I examine? When I say I examine myself, so there the word image comes into being. It's the image that I see. If I had no image about myself, I would not create an image about Naresh ji. Because I have an image about myself, therefore I have an image about you. Because, and my image is a result. Now, where does my image come into? How does my image come into being? Is it a result of my interaction with society? Is it a result of something which was already there before my interactions with society began? What makes me feel that I am intelligent? That's part of my image, right? My image is my thoughts about myself, my emotions about myself. What makes me feel that I am superior to a woman and therefore she must be under my control? What makes me feel? Is it the propaganda and the ease with which I have come under the influence of that propaganda? Is it, what is it? What is the nature of that image making mechanism? So, what I'm saying, since I insist that we go in the same direction, at least for the duration of this dialogue, what is it that I am supposed to examine? How does that, if it's an image, then where does that image, how does it come into being? What constitutes the image? My thoughts, my feelings. And then why do I cling to an image? I may have an image about myself. Like I may think that I can speak very clearly about Krishnamurti, as some people have here said. That may lead to my belief, to the formation of an image that I can speak clearly about. Now, if somebody in this group says now that what you said just now is just meaningless, doesn't make any sense, then this is the image that I know may get hurt. So, when I listen and come under the, as long as, now here the question of listening passively also arises, comes into being. Now, does an image get formed? It becomes embedded in the consciousness because I am not able to look and listen passively. Then there is a registration. I experience the pleasure of being called a person who can speak about Krishnamurti with clarity. That gets registered. Now, if I listen to this statement made by some people, but don't react, because I know that I can't. And also because I know that even if I can, it doesn't have much value. Then you don't, your statement, your observation doesn't lead to the formation of an image in my mind, whether negative or positive. So could we look into this whole process through which the image is born, my attachment, my identification, my attachment to and identification with that image becomes very strong, so strong that I become very touchy about it, very possessive about it. The moment you say something that goes against what I believe in, I get hurt and my relationship with you gets vitiated. We need to look at this. We need to look at the formation of image. What do I see? The question was, what do I see? What is relationship? I said that there are many, other than those relationships of which I am conscious, there are 1,000 of which I am not even conscious. What is happening in China perhaps now, I may not be, I may be thinking that I don't have a direct relationship with that, but I may be very badly affected by what's going on there, or between Ukraine and Russia. I mean, like all kinds of things that are happening all over the world. I am not aware of those relationships. So there are relationships within a limited field of which I am aware. And then there are thousands and thousands of other relationships of which I am not aware, but I am equally deeply affected by what is, happening there in those areas also. So the question is, can we look at the image? Can we look how it comes into being? How do I allow it to take root in my mind, take roots in my mind? And why I identify with it so much that I no longer see that is the mud that you were talking about. The image is the mud. The image makes the water muddy, and it stops me from looking at you without the image. It stops me from looking at myself without the image. And if I have an image about myself, I'm bound to have an image about you. So having an image is same as self. What we call self is an image that I have about myself. So other than that image, what am I? Is there something else also? Or the image has occupied the whole space and there is no space left now from where I can look at the emergence and disappearance of the image. Does the image dominate the whole space? It has occupied the whole of the sky. There is no clear patch now. It's completely overcast. Yeah, that's all.